So to begin this evening, I'm going to give you a 15-minute overview of how aspects of the divine feminine have unfolded as a religious focus across the ages of human development, from prehistory to the present forms of the divine feminine in our society. This Mother Goddess timeline will set the stage for our further discussion, where I will hand over the evening to our full panel, and then I will be acting as a moderator. And I'm sure I'll talk too, right? Anyway, so I recorded the overview portion of our evening earlier onto our PowerPoint format because when I practiced it on Zoom, I could not get the two programs to play well together while being recorded. Hopefully it'll play well as a recording. Zoom is more than happy to play a recording of my PowerPoint presentation, so we'll get to that in a minute, we hope. All right, so before I hit play, I want to tell you about the rest of the evening. The roundtable panel includes Berta, Erica, and Kathy is on phone without video, so she can't see us, but we will be able to hear her fine. We will start with two mini presentations, the recorded one, as I've explained, which is from me, and then Kathy will contribute a summary of the book Joseph and Asenath, and she will explain its connection to Isis and Mary Magdalene and probably more. After that, we will join in a panel discussion together about the theme of the divine feminine, and we can go anywhere with this, so it should be interesting. This unusual format is an experiment, and we hope you enjoy us trying something new. I'm always all about that. So we will ask you to remain muted as you are now and hold your questions and thoughts to the end of our roundtable discussion. You are free to add questions into the chat area at any time, though, and we will try to incorporate them in our discussion. And then later we'll invite you to join a larger discussion with all of us. We hope to stimulate a lot of thought and questions from you as the evening progresses. And then just a quick note about the timeline I've laid out here. In the interest of time and focus, I've left out some obvious choices like the goddess Lilith, who is complicated and probably deserves her own full presentation. I had her in there and then I had to take her out because it just was too long. All right, and then also the Eastern traditions of Hindu, Shakti, the Himalayan Tara, who is the wisdom goddess, the mother of all Buddhas, and also the Chinese Kuan Yin. They certainly represent the divine feminine too, but I had to draw the line somewhere and I don't want anyone to think I forgot them. I really didn't. I just didn't have time. So I had them in there and then I had to cut the script. So here we go. I didn't want to keep you for half an hour. So this is about 15 minutes. And now I'm going to see if it will play. Let's see, here we go. Oh, also, I have been fighting with this little thing that comes up and it's supposed to go away and it usually does, but if it stays up there, I will keep fighting with it. It's the little thing, the bar, and you're supposed to be able to click off it and it goes away. So we'll see if that works. And here we are. I'm going to begin this recording of my overview with a summarizing statement. The divine feminine is the feminine aspect of the divine power that connects and binds the earth. She is the goddess energy that exists within all of us. Many ancient cultures had a divine feminine concept. The Egyptians had Isis, the Greeks had Aphrodite, and of course the Romans had Venus, and the Hindus had Shakti. So in the beginning was the great Earth Mother, giver of life and wielder of death. We don't know the name given to her in Paleolithic times because we're not going to find any representations from 50,000 years ago to suggest a name. We do know that the earliest humans practiced some type of rituals that, understandably, revolved around the questions dealing with death. Archaeologists have found human bones buried in groups, covered in ochre, it's that red dust, possibly signifying the burial of a person with status. Then in caves found within the mountains of Germany, a Cro-Magnon settlement was unearthed that dated from 30 to 42,000 years ago. Cro-Magnon is the first anatomically modern human, and this settlement contained evidence of fully modern human activity, including creation of figurative art, instrumental music with a flute carved from vulture bone, and possibly the earliest religious practices as well. Anthropologist Nicholas Kennard excavated burial groupings containing portable amulets depicting the form of an idealized woman with unusual proportions, presenting a strange artistic trend that was repeated across time and with figurines found all across Eurasia. These are the oldest statuary found, carved from mammoth tusk or in limestone. They are tiny, 2.5 inches in length, and they came to be known as the Venus amulets. Besides the buried bones themselves, some of the amulets had also been coated in the layers of ochre. This suggests overtone of religious thought involving, at the very least, a female fertility goddess, although, of course, not all scholars even agree on that. Perhaps worn as amulets, the figurines might simply represent a protective measure against evil spirits. In her book, though, The Emergence of the Goddess, Helen Benini argues that these figurines represent the archetype of a female supreme creator. She writes, although quite far from the establishment of organized religion, these Venus figurines are indicative of what Jung sees as the primordial or primeval expression of the idea of the feminine sacred. Leaving the long ago behind, next we can jump forward in a great leap to the Neolithic era, 30,000 years ago, arriving at 9,000 years ago. Here on our timeline, we find the sacred cave dedicated to the goddess of childbirth, Aletheia, on the island of Crete. That sacred cave was in continuous use from 9,000 years ago up until Roman times, spanning 1,000 years, which is amazing. Religious practices were most active in the cave around 2200 BCE during the height of the Minoan civilization residing there. Then, almost simultaneous to the development of a Minoan goddess religion, 8,000 years ago, pre-dynastic Egypt saw the beginnings of worship of the mother of the cosmos, Mut, or Mut, meaning mother. Sometimes even said Mit. Mit was considered a primal deity associated with the primordial waters of Nu, or Nun, from which everything in the world was born. This idea is referenced in the Secret Doctrine, stanza 4. By the power of the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge, Fohat, the breath of their progeny, the son of the sons, having called forth from the lower abyss, chaos, the elusive form of our universe and the 7 elements. And then following HPB's commentary on stanza 4 states, this is the esotericism of the Vedantins, the light manifested through Eswara, the Logos. It is at one and the same time the mother, and also the daughter of the Logos. While in Trans-Himalayan teachings, it is the mother or abstract ideal matter, Mula Prakti, the root of nature manifested in the Logos. After the mother, the daughter in Egyptian mythology might be the sky goddess, Neith. Some say Nit, said to be there at the creation of the world. She is one of the oldest deities of ancient Egypt, who was worshipped early in the pre-dynastic period and whose veneration continued through the last pharaohs to rule Egypt before the coming of Rome. She is a topic that we could talk about for hours, but alas, we must move on. But looking at this representation in this picture, I love the detail and the colors and the stars and the sky. In our time, the most recognized goddess would have to be Isis. But I was interested to learn that prior to approximately 2400 BCE, which is the 5th dynasty, there were no references to Isis. Regardless of her so-called late arrival, almost 5,000 years ago, eventually Isis became the most important and enduring goddess in the pantheon. Temples to Isis spread beyond Egypt, and temple priestesses continued to practice well into the Roman era through 500 Common Era, even practicing and surviving alongside the rise of Christian orthodoxy. Also keep in mind that ancient myths and religions got blended together because of the connecting influence of the Silk Road, ancient spice trade routes, bringing together people from all over. Once Orthodox Christianity began spreading throughout Roman territory, the bishops of this new religion wanted to make sure that nothing else blended in with their practices and Christian beliefs. They were not happy with any competing religious practices, whether Roman or the Egyptian borrowed cult of Isis. What they called pagan statuary and altars were banned in private homes and businesses by 315 Common Era. And city and regional temples were torn down or closed off. Instead, a 5-story colossus of Emperor Constantine was built to commemorate the establishment of Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire. I noticed an article recently that enough of the colossus was unearthed to accurately recreate it for the Capitoline Museum in Rome. I find that kind of awesome and somehow hilarious to our modern sensibilities. So for that reason, I have included the museum's picture to show you this recreation. That was probably done in cement, I'm guessing. I can't remember. Astonishingly, the original great head, arms, and legs of the Colossus were carved from white marble, while the rest of the body consisted of a brick core and wooden framework, possibly covered with gilded bronze. So, now you know this, and you can't unknow this fun fact. And if ever in Rome, be sure to look up the 5-story statue of Constantine. And one thing is for sure, emperors had to have healthy egos to commission and purchase something like that. How long does it take to carve that head out of white marble? It just boggles the mind. But I digress. Let's get back to the goddess Isis. Even with so much destructive pressure aimed at the Isis cult from both the church and the Roman Empire and army, Isis worship didn't die out completely. The initiations and rituals practiced in her temples did not disappear quickly or easily. I was amazed to learn that even as late as 1000 Common Era, in the northern regions well beyond the reach of Rome, there were scattered temples dedicated to Isis, where the people still conducted rituals. In these far-flung lands, the tribes and clans residing way out there were considered barbarians and basically left to their own devices. Those regions now are most of Europe, including Britain and Scandinavia. What also helped her cult survive is that traces of Isis and her cult practices went underground, with the use of different names and more obscure references. One of those references, interestingly, is the Magdala, meaning the tower, a name under which the royal line of the priestesses of Isis was recorded and tracked from generation to generation. Initiated priestesses continued cult practices, and they accepted and initiated members, not necessarily openly. The term Magdala was ascribed to Mary as Mary Magdalene in the New Testament book of Hebrews. And it is no accident that Mary, meaning the beloved Magdalene, was noted in the New Testament as being present at the crucifixion. And we know from Easter that she was recorded as the first to see the risen Yeshua. The Gnostic book of Mary, attributed to her, is most easily explained as the teachings of Yeshua that were not made public, the ones given to the disciples because they were initiated and they were ready to receive the information that could not be shared with the general public. It is also no surprise that in every surviving copy, the first 3 pages are thrown out and many at the end. It is doubtful we will ever find those lost fragments because even though monks might have risked their lives to hold on to this book and bury it, they would not have had a complete copy to bury. One has to wonder What was said in those beginning pages that was so threatening to the founding fathers of Christianity? And of course, they were fathers. They're recorded as all male because by then, no women were leaders. Our panel will likely have more to say about Mary Magdalene, but for now, I will get back to the goddess timeline overview. So now we come to Cybele. Cybele was the ancient Greek goddess who was considered the great mother of the gods, associated with motherhood, nature, fertility, and agriculture. Her cult first spread from the obscurity of Phrygia into the ethnically Greek colonies, and then later into ancient Greece itself. Eventually, she became a major cult of the Roman Empire from the 5th century BCE onward until Christianity stamped out all worship of Roman gods and goddesses under Constantine, as I've referenced earlier. She was later merged with Artemis, but her cult lasted 800 years in Rome and stretched back another 1,000 years before that, a significant cult that was almost as long-lived as the devotion to Isis. Like Cybele, the timeline of the Celtic goddess Danu did overlap with Isis, but the barbarian northern lands of future Ireland were isolated and thus undisturbed until Christian missionaries landed at some point, and later the Scandinavian Vikings invaded. From 1400 BCE until as late as 43 CE, Danu dominated the land of the Celts. From the oral tradition of the Celtic tribes from 3,400 years ago, they identified Danu as the mother of all the Celtic gods and goddesses and mother of all the people. Similarly to the other mother goddesses, she was associated with fertility, motherhood, and the cycles of nature. Danu was a nurturing figure who protected her children and provided for their needs. I just have to add, this was quite a contrast with the vengeful God Jehovah of the Hebrew Torah and the Christian Old Testament. Danu was also connected with the land and the natural world, and her worship was closely tied to agriculture and the growth of crops. She was also a goddess of the other world, the realm of the gods and spirits, believed to exist alongside the mortal world. And that's interesting because alongside really speaks almost to quantum physics of this overlap in our worlds based on our consciousness. And lastly, we move forward to the written text of the Hebrew Bible in the second book of the writings and what the Christian Old Testament includes as the book of Proverbs. Here we have the last major insertion of the divine feminine in religious awareness and practice. In Proverbs, we are introduced to Sophia, known to Christians as the wisdom tradition. The verse of Proverbs 8:27 says, "I was there when the heavens were prepared." And this is from a larger chapter referencing Sophia, so there is an assumption that the I means Sophia. And some translations actually say, I, Sophia, was there. Thus, a feminine reference is made about co-creation from around 400 BCE based on when the Torah, the book of the prophets, and the writings were written down. Though the oral Torah goes back into a dim and long ago past, in terms of written text, the Sophia wisdom tradition is relatively new compared to the truly ancient Mother Goddess traditions. According to one Gnostic myth, the shaping of the material world was the result of Sophia, who was often described as an emanation of the eternal light, an immaculate mirror of God's activity. The wisdom tradition of the feminine Sophia has endured because Christians carried it forward into our current time. There also has been a scholarly effort to locate Sophia historically as the goddess of wisdom within the context of Christian religious practices, texts, and images. All right, so that's my list of goddesses completed, and our timeline has come up to our current era. With this summary, I hope I have set the scene with a very broad brush, and I will hand off this presentation to the rest of you on the panel to fill in some of the details. For our second mini presentation, Kathy will tell us about the ancient lost book of Joseph and Asenath, his wife. As we probably remember, Joseph was the grandson of Abraham, great-grandson of Abraham, and the favorite son of Jacob and Rachel from the book of Genesis. Kathy will summarize this book, said to be the confession and prayer of Asenath, and then describe Asenath's connections to Isis, Sophia, and Artemis. After Kathy's contribution, we'll talk some more about especially Isis and Mary Magdalene. So Kathy, I'm going to bring up, you can't see it, but I'm going to bring up the other PowerPoint. And here you go. And hopefully just a couple PowerPoints will show. I'm not used to this computer. Hold on, I'll get it back. I know I haven't shared anything yet. I was trying to be fancy and do the slideshow, but I'm going to have to do share and then I'll do the slideshow. 1 second here. Kathy, we are showing the title page of Joseph and Asenath. So I would like you to just take it away. You can start talking about this book and whatever else you want to tell us.
Okay, well, thanks, Hope. I got interested in archaeology when I was in college as part of my history degree at Bemidji State. And I took classes in biblical archaeology from Mr. Graham, who was my teacher. And he inspired me to study the topic even more. Besides biblical archaeology, I've studied Hindu and American archaeology. Well, this text, Joseph and Asenath, was donated to the British Museum in 1847 by a wealthy man by the name of Auguste Paco, who got it from the ancient Macarius monastery in Egypt. The museum donated the text to the British Library. It is a 6th century copy of original document, which they believe probably dates back to the 1st or 2nd century. Moses of Inglia translated this text in about 570 CE from the Greek to the Syriac, which is a dialect of Aramaic. The Syriac Gnostics are located mostly in Eastern Europe, in places like Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Iran, and Iraq. Syriac is one of the biblical languages, along with Greek, Hebrew, and Latin. The Syriac Gnostics often used Old Testament figures to foreshadow Christian ones, and they often used false titles to get around the Catholic Church censors. The Inquisition started in the 4th century CE after the Catholic Church had established a canon, which became the accepted text. They burned texts that they did not like. They also burned people at the stake who had different views about Jesus than they had. So the Gnostics buried texts in the desert, and some of them ended up at the Nag Hammadi location. Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Gospel of Philip, Gospel of Thomas, they were out in that location, and there were about like 42 texts in that area. So that's one thing they did to preserve their tradition. They also coded documents like Joseph and Asenath with phrases they understood but others did not know about. In this text, Joseph is called the Son of God. Mary Magdalene is represented by Asenath, who lived in the tower in this particular text. Magdalene actually means tower. So, of course, these symbols, they're a symbol of something else. They're not really about Joseph and Asenath. They're about the other individuals here. They're about Jesus and Mary Magdalene. But, of course, the Son of God was Jesus, as I said, not Joseph. In fact, the Jews would find calling someone the Son of God as being blasphemy. That was actually one of the charges that they had against Jesus, the chief priests, when they were going to crucify him, that he had that title put out about him, and that was unacceptable to them. When you read the text, it's good to read the notes underneath, besides the first part of the book, which gives you a lot of the knowledge about the text. The Gnostics and the cultural times in which Mary and Jesus lived. The authors of the book are Sim Cha Jacobaki and Barry Wilson, who were born in Canada. And they're professors and scholars, and it is distributed by W.W. Norton and Company. And they have a website for that, www.pegasusbooks.com. What is the basic story about? It's about the marriage of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, how they bore children, and a plot against their lives. How did Jesus and Mary meet? Mary's father was a pagan Phoenician priest who was likely to be a fish trader. There was a delicacy found in the Sea of Galilee, an expensive and salty fish, which the Phoenicians and Greeks traded in this area of the world. This area of Israel was the most cosmopolitan because of all the people buying and selling these fish. Jesus stayed overnight in her father's house. Mary lived in a tower next to the house. She came down when Jesus visited her father. Jesus told her he would return in 8 days. On the 8th day, he returned to her tower and appeared in an angelic spiritual form. Mary was a Phoenician pagan priestess and had repented of her worship of the pagan deities from the time Jesus had departed from her father's house. They had a spiritualized marriage with bread, wine, and honeycomb. These are all Christian symbols. There were bees all around her. These are connected with goddesses such as Artemis and Isis. According to the text, Jesus came to rectify the fall in the Garden of Eden by being a Savior who marries Sophia, is called wisdom in the Bible. He came for the sacred marriage, to balance the male and the female, not to save humanity from their sins. So this is very different than the traditional Catholic Church's beliefs. They had a very different viewpoint of why Jesus was there. Later that same day, Jesus came back and talked to her about the physical marriage, which happened the next day. Mary is called from that day forward the bride of God. They eventually had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. The Gnostics called the consummation of their marriage the sacred bridal chamber. It became a sacred ceremony that was very popular among the married Gnostics. There was a plot against Jesus by the emperor's son, who was attracted to Mary Magdalene. He wanted to kidnap her and kill Jesus and the children. His plot was foiled by a brother of Jesus. This shows that Jesus was a well-known individual, that the emperor's son would want to take his wife. He was not just an ordinary rabbi in Galilee. Mary is connected with Artemis and Isis. Isis is the goddess of health, wealth, and prosperity, who was worshipped in Ephesus, which is in Turkey. She has a tower on her head, and there are bees coming out of her garment. Paul preached against her in Ephesus. The whole city rioted against him. The business people did not like him preaching in favor of the one God. Artemis brought in much commerce to the city, so this is why they had this big riot there. Lakshmi is a Hindu goddess of health, wealth, and prosperity. Her consort is Vishnu, also known as the savior and preserver of humanity. So you see there are other types of goddesses that have the same kind of quality as Artemis. They're found in other places in the Middle East. Isis is an Egyptian goddess who is part of the Egyptian Trinity. She is the mother, Osiris is the father, and Horus is the son. She is also connected with bees. She resurrected her husband, Osiris. after Seth had murdered him out of envy. And of course, you think of Mary Magdalene, she's connected with Jesus and his resurrection. So there's a parallel between these two goddesses for this reason. Pretty interesting, isn't it? It is interesting that Edgar Cayce, the well-known psychic, who could tap into the Akashic records, he would be able to scan the body of a person and diagnose medical conditions and suggest a cure. He's very well known for that. But he would also be able to give readings on other topics. And one of the popular topics he had was on Jesus. He said that Jesus had a number of previous lives, just like Vishnu did in the Hindu tradition. You might think, well, Jesus only showed up once. Well, you think of, well, all these other deities showed up a few times too, so it doesn't seem too much of a stretch that Jesus would have had more than one life. But according to Cayce, the previous lives of Jesus include Adam, Joshua, Melchizedek, Elisha, Zoroaster, and Joseph. Adam was, of course, the originator of humans in that area. Cayce says that there were a lot of different originators in the world, not just Adam, but in that area he was the originator. Jesus is called the second Adam in the Bible. Joshua was a general in Moses' army in Exodus. Melchizedek was a high priest and king of Salem who had neither father nor mother. Salem means peace, and Jesus was the Prince of Peace. The book of Hebrews in the New Testament mentions Jesus as being like Melchizedek, and Cayce says he was Melchizedek. Elisha was a healer and prophet and disciple of Elijah, the prophet. Zoroaster started the Zoroastrian religion in Persia, modern-day Iran. Joseph was, of course, married to Asenath, who was an Egyptian, and he could interpret dreams and was a seer. He correctly interpreted Pharaoh's dream and predicted that Egypt would have 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. The Gnostics probably knew that Jesus had been Joseph in a previous life. As Jesus said, what has been hidden shall be revealed. The Gnostic texts give us a better idea of Jesus as a person who was married to Mary Magdalene and had a family. Mary Magdalene is brought out of the mystery as being the bride of God and who was a co-redemptress with Jesus to rectify the fall in the Garden of Eden. She was the apostle to the apostles, and as Hope said, she saw him first when he was resurrected. She was the first leader of the Gentile church, not Paul. People think it was Paul, but it was actually Mary who was the leader of the Gentile church. She believed in the one God, but she did not convert to Judaism. And in these temples that they had with the Gnostics, they're kind of interesting because they combine symbols from Judaism and pagan symbols that they found in Galilee. This is kind of the area where Jesus had a lot of his ministry. So that's pretty interesting that they found something like that. And they think that it probably was the Gnostics that, because traditional Jews would not put those two symbols together. Well, I'll close with this. It's called the Lord's Prayer, and it's translated from Aramaic directly to the English. And it's very different than what people are used to, because in the long time ago, when they had the King James Version, what they did is they translated this whole Lord's Prayer from the Greek, from the Aramaic, and then they translated it into Latin, and then it got translated finally into English. So this is kind of why, and this particular version has a lot more detail than the traditional Bible really has. This is probably closer to what Jesus really said, probably. O cosmic birther of all radiance and vibration, soften the ground of our being and carve out a space within us where your presence can abide. Fill us with your creativity so that we may be empowered to bear the fruit of your mission. Let us each of our actions bear fruit in accordance with our desire. Endow us with wisdom to produce and share what each being needs to grow and flourish. Untie the tangled threads of destiny that bind us as we release others from the entanglement of past mistakes. Don't let us be seduced by that which would divert us from our true purpose, but illuminate the opportunities of the present moment. For you are the ground and the fruitful vision, the birth power and fulfillment, as all is gathered and made whole once again. So be it. So that's the end.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. That was wonderful. Wow, so much to say. And also, that is on my refrigerator, that version. I think maybe you're the one who directed me to it, and I read it many times a week. I love it. It has that gentleness that I really always sensed that Yeshua would have versus, what has been squashed into the New Testament. So thank you, Kathy. And so, Erica, would you like to do the Sophia piece a little bit now? Would you just do a little mini Sophia focus? Would that be all right?
This is teeny tiny Sophia
Okay,
focus because I really don't. Sophia's not my jam.
right. Oh, you know what? I forgot to say that
Susan?
you're filling in for Susan, and
Yeah.
she has the whole thing and notes and everything. So yeah, thank you. We're just having you do the piece that can be read.
I am just going to read from Carol Parrish's book on the Dictionary of Spiritual Thought on Sophia. And let me get closer here. In the original Greek writings of Scripture, Sophia means wisdom, also understood as a female expression or being, an aspect of the Creator. Many Gnostic systems depict her as wisdom that becomes distorted in the false world of creation. Sophia is rediscovered as we clear distortions, such as Maya, glamours, and illusions, and learn to listen inwardly, to know higher will. Sophia is she who dwells within and directs through intuitive guidance. More simply, the wisdom abiding with deeper levels of self that emerges as our personal inner knower. In the wisdom of Solomon, Sophia is herself mother. She sits by God's throne and can do all things. Sophia present in creation. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. Christo Sophia acknowledges the wisdom aspect of Christ consciousness or love wisdom as the androgyny of the divine masculine and feminine natures. Sophia may be best known in Eastern Orthodox Christianity as Theotokos, which is Greek. Sophia once again appearing with some prominence upon the world scene in Western approaches to Christianity, is considered most often as the world soul.
Nice. All right. And so I wanted to just show you. All right, I'm going to share this with you. It's so beautiful. Again, Susan would have had more to say about this and also just the whole idea. She went to Sancta Sophia, that was her seminary. And so she would expound on that. And maybe we'll just have her do a talk on Sophia, but in the future. So let me just share this for a moment. This was in her, it was prominently displayed at Sancta Sophia. And it's a representation with a lot of, it's an artist with a lot of symbolism in it. You can see the circles within circles, it's like they're orbs around her out on the outside. So I'm going to stop share because that's all we have on Sophia. but I wanted you to see the picture because Susan would want you to see it. So, all right. So now, how about if we start some discussion so in our panel, we're going to spotlight Erica, and I got to find you all. Berta, where's my spotlight? And then me. And we will figuratively.
Kathy would be part of that if she had video, but
Kathy is part of it, but we can't spotlight a phone. So,
but you can, yeah.
yeah. And so, Kathy, go ahead and unmute yourself because you can jump in and I think we might have some questions for you actually right off the bat. But so where do we start, guys? I'm just, yeah. So, so Erica, you had put wow on something. What was the wow?
The wow was the prayer. I have not heard the original. I would love a copy of that. That resonated with me. My take on modern Christianity. Every time I hear Constantine, I just kind of want to. He angers me because that's when things became controlled. That's when and I don't want to go into great detail, but I just feel like it became structured. That's when religion became more structured and controlled people and yeah. So that prayer just really, it resonates. It's like that I felt like I was being spoken to honestly with the truth. And I would love a copy of it. So that was my wow.
Yeah, and I created a graphic with that on there that I have on my refrigerator. And while we're doing this, maybe on break, I'll see if I can pull it up. And again, I have all my stuff on cloud because I lost my other laptop. So I don't know if I can find it, but if I can, I'll put it up and then I think you guys can just download it. I believe I did it on a Word doc or something where it's a picture. So, so all the words are there. And it's also pretty. So I will, I'll get that on there. So yeah, so Kathy, I'm fascinated. I mean, I've heard, and Berta, doesn't this sound familiar? I've heard the B connection between Isis and Mary Magdalene, but Kathy, can you say a little bit more about that? Are we thinking, one thing you said, okay, here's my question. She is said by the Gnostics to have left behind the pagan ways as a priestess to convert to what? I mean, we didn't have Christianity under Jesus, Yeshua.
The one God. She was
monotheism. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, monotheism, but
sure.
she didn't convert to Judaism.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And that was kind of common. Actually, the Jews had an area, the main temple, and it was like the outer court, and the Gentiles were in that court, and then the women were in that court.
Yeah.
And they didn't teach the women in the time frame. This is not true of modern society, however. In modern times, you have women rabbis, the Reformed Church, or I should say Reformed Judaism, and then you have the conservative Jews, which are the moderate Jews. They have female rabbis and they teach women. It's the Orthodox. It would be different, of course. But in those times, that's where the women were, and also the people that believed in the one God, the Gentiles, they called them God-fearing individuals, is the deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the bee reference, Berta? Because you are a beekeeper. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, and I just looked something up, so I had, and so it's a website I found. It's the Melissae, I think is what they call their priestesses, the Greek myth and legend, and I'll just read part of this because this is what I'm remembering. I couldn't remember the exact god, yeah. Anyway. It's sometimes it is referred to all the nymphs who tended to the infant Zeus. Sometimes it referred to the bees who provided Zut with his food. Sometimes it referred to the priestesses who guarded the Oracle of Delphi. And sometimes the word referred to the priestesses of Demeter, of Persephone, and of Artemis. Indeed, Aphrodite even included Melissa as one of her sacred names. And Persephone did too, it looks like. So yeah, it was pretty widespread, the Melissa. And I remember reading a book about them. It's been a long time. But yeah, it's a pretty because I think you see that the bee everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and Artemis was Sybil, so that really stretches a long ways back. So first Sybil and then Artemis. So yeah.
Well, and they say, like we don't, just in modern times and now, like I don't think we understand how we rely on the pollinators, and the bees. Like without them, yeah, not much happens on this whole planet. And also, I wanted to mention that I put in the chat the book called Prayers of the Cosmos and the author, and that's where I think that beautiful prayer came from.
Yeah. It's so wonderful when it's translated directly. There's other examples of the original language coming over that you just go, wow, even okay, what's the Mount, the Beatitudes are beautiful when you hear them translated directly instead of through all these languages. Blessed are, it's like, oh my God. Yeah, somebody was a language scholar that talked about that and at once I remember, and I think, wow, how much are we missing in our English? What else is jumping out, guys? Oh, and I know something else. Berta, do you want to have some thoughts about, I did not go into the goddess concepts of the Native Americans, although I knew about the spider woman and that. I said, I focused in, but do you want to just make some comments before break on that?
Yeah, just when we were talking about this, I started thinking about our local goddesses attached to our land. Even one of our lakes in the Twin Cities area is Lake Nokomis, and so Nokomis is the grandmother, Nokomis and Nishomis, and Nishomis is grandfather. And I just I guess I don't know what I would need to say about it other than that these and I'm really curious if the bee shows up somehow in there too. I'm sure they do, it's good, but yeah, so yeah, I just kind of interested in like the local, in all the different tribes. We all have goddesses here too. They're still alive here in the landscape and in the changing of the seasons and the sun and the moon and that kind of thing. So yeah, we can get into that more after the break. But yeah, I just thought I wanted to include Nokomis in
And
this.
say it again, because that means grandmother, but it's not just Nokomis. You're saying something.
Oh, yes, and I always refer to Nokomis is grandmother,
Yeah.
and Nishomis is grandfather.
Oh, that's what you're saying. Okay. Yeah.
If we were to get into the
Wow.
clarity of male and female.
Cool. All right. Thank you. The voice of the Ojibwe, because in chat, Ciela is saying Nokomis was also the Ojibwe goddess of the moon.
Yes.
Interesting. Goddess of the
Yeah,
moon.
and I have just a little piece in this. This is kind of a wonderful.
Yeah.
And I have two copies. I don't know what happened to my good copy, but my other copy is split in half, and it's the Nishomis book, and it's got a lot of the myths and things in it of the Ojibwe tribe. I just wanted to read a little piece of it about he was looking for questions. And so he was asked, this was original man and his grandmother, Nokomis. And so the original man hadn't found her yet, but he wanted some questions answered that she could answer. So he asked the creator, and the creator said where she was. And it is across a vast lake lives your Nokomis, grandmother. She is not from the world you have walked. She has the wisdom of the spirits. Go to her lodge, For it is the elders who carry the knowledge of these things that you want to know. Yeah, and she is associated with the moon, like Ciela said.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And the mother goddess also is woven in with creator, creator goddess, God goddess in all of these traditions. What strikes me too is that so many of the stories, the descriptions, of course, over long periods of time are similar. Similar because of the Silk Road and the connections that people made. So we have a different name, but here's the stories are similar.
I think too that maybe the just the development of a goddess of the Great Mother kind of came naturally in a way too. I don't necessarily think they had to share information. They might have shared art or things like that about it, or had deep discussions about it at some point. But I think there is a certain natural progression about a divine birthing of mankind.
Yep.
May not be the best way to describe it, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to find, and I couldn't figure it out. I remember seeing probably in National Geographic birthing chambers that looked like they were in the sand and clay, and maybe it was, well, maybe it was Minoan, but I couldn't find any pictures of her information. So when we open it up to the rest of the group, I want to ask if anyone else has known about that. Something that struck me about what Kathy said is that they didn't just burn the books, they burned the people. And that was 400 going in. I mean, that they cracked down that fast. And how arrogant is it that Constantine had a 5-story? I mean, that's bigger than the Statue of Liberty, which I haven't seen in person or anything, but we don't have statues that size anymore. And he was not the only one, of course. Lots of them did these, I'm sorry, but stupid colossuses. But to do it because you're declaring Christianity and you're going to do a crackdown and, get everybody in line. I don't know, just amazes me. Maybe I shouldn't have that on a recording.
Well, it's interesting because it is sort of a form of world government in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
They did kind of want to harmonize what everybody on the same wavelength so that they could give these rules. These are the rules you get to all follow now, and we'll all be happy, happy, joy, joy. And then there's all these little groups that stay hidden. And I'm surprised. I'm just curious because when I was younger, my mother had several books on the Essenes that I read, and I remember reading that his mother was an Essene, possibly that Jesus' mother or Yahweh, Yeshua.
I've heard that too somewhere.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like a really highly, kind of metaphysical group. They're just kind of thinking deeper. They're diving deeper like we are.
Mhm. Very, what's that called when you deny yourself? They were harsh in how they treated themselves in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They
So-
were ascetics. I think that's the
Oh, go
term
ahead.
they did use.
What? What, Kathy?
They were ascetics.
That's the word. Thank you. Aesthetics. Couldn't think of the word.
Yeah, Edward Casey, he said that Mary was an Essene. That's someone had wondered about that. That had asked about Jesus and his mother, and that's what he claimed, that she was an Essene. Yeah.
Oh, and Lydia says, so this thing about the Immaculate Birth in the Essenes, I've heard that too about Mary being an Essene, and there were more women who could give birth without a male. Oh, they gave birth to a male. That's what's crazy. I can understand, a woman giving birth to a daughter, but what? How? What? Anyway, yeah, that's pretty cool. Thank you. Thank you, Lydia.
Yeah, I know we kind of touched lightly on ISIS. I think one of the things, and I can't remember where I saw it, but ISIS was also connected to the star Sirius, which is Sothis, I think. And in Paris, the city of Paris is laid out in kind of a star pattern, and it's based on this ancient connection that they had with ISIS that came through, because it was a set. ISIS was originally a set. And in that picture of ISIS, ISIS came after Hathor. Hathor was the cow goddess that came before ISIS, before recorded history, before all the statues. So that's why ISIS kind of shows up, or Aset shows up after Hathor, because the great mother, the great cow, you see her temple in Egypt with the cow ears, the little cow ears. They're so cute.
Mm.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting about the layout of Paris and how it's based on, and it kind of all connects back to ISIS. And I really wish I knew where that article was I read. I fell down some rabbit hole probably 25 years ago on that and don't remember where it was. I was going to say if anyone else had come across that information at any point. Something to do with the Templars too, I'm not sure. All of those things, all of that's other good stuff to delve into.
Oh, Kathy, you said that the Gnostic or the Cathars, somebody had pagan in their churches. They had pagan symbols alongside the Christian symbols. Is that what you said? Is that right?
Well, that would be in Israel. They found a temple there, and they were Gnostic temples, most likely. At first they thought they were Jewish, but then they looked into it. Well, they had pagan symbols, and then they had Jewish stories. One of the Jewish stories was of Abraham sacrificing his son, and then the angel coming to stop him. And there's that story from the Old Testament. That was one of the ones they found. And then they had a zodiac, was the other symbol they had, and then they had Helios, and Jesus was Helios, the sun god. Yes.
Wow.
So they equated him as he was the son of God. And actually the church fathers at first wanted to appropriate the pagan ideas with the Christian ideas to make it more palatable to the pagans, to Christianity. So one of the reasons they chose December 25th was because it was close to the solstice, the bringing in of the sun, when Jesus was born. But actually, he was more likely to have been born in the springtime, because you look at the text, and Joseph and Mary were going to be part of the census, and they were walking there, and they were paying their taxes, and that was at the springtime of the year, because people wouldn't have done that in the wintertime, for one thing. But that was just the time of year they did that. So that's what was happening when Jesus was born. They were on traveling there, and then he's born there. So that's kind of what happened. They tried to use that kind of thing to get people attracted to Christianity.
Right. Yeah. And also the thing with Paris, Mary Magdalene was supposedly have gone, she landed in France, what became France, right? Isn't that part of the story? So it's not too surprising that there'd be such a connection even with ISIS later.
Yeah, there's a church of Mary Magdalene that's in France, actually.
Yeah,
so
on
there's
the south, I think.
Tradition of her being in Britain too,
Ooh.
actually too.
Wow.
Yeah, Arthur, the Round Table. I think that
Sure.
that has connection with with Mary Magdalene. That whole thing, that whole story, there's a connection in there.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, and also Mary Magdalene being the head of the Gentile, the first churches of the Gentiles. I don't
Right,
think I'd
yeah.
heard that. Is that because she was in France? Or is just because she
Oh, well,
was
that's
who she was?
she was there in Israel, and that's
Oh,
what she had. You know, that she was the person that was really the first person. Paul came later, but she was really
okay.
the first person. Yeah, she was
Ah,
a
yeah.
Gentile.
Sure,
Well,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Wow. And also, I'm still really interested in the Joseph and his wife as another, I don't know how to say her name. So what you're saying is they put in this book what was really a blind. It was a camouflage for the story they
Right.
wanted to tell. But if they told that, they'd die. They would burn.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and then so they had to put things that stand in for things
Yeah,
that they understood. But
yeah,
the church wouldn't, and if they saw the title Joseph and Anthony, oh, that's in the Old Testament. We won't look at this one.
yeah.
So
Right.
that's
And
the
you can't
idea.
prove it, right? You can still say,
Right.
no, no, we mean Joseph.
Yeah, right, exactly. We
Clever.
didn't get him.
Yeah. And actually, that might be the book that in our class, Ruby talked about. I think that might be because I could never catch on what she was talking about actually, during the class because everything went really deep. We studied I counted up the hours were probably like 3 credits worth of college credits with Ruby, and she spoke to the Theosophical Society a couple of years ago, and then many years ago now, but then she taught a class, and Susan, and it's part of what fermented into this presentation actually is that because I found the notes and then I said to Berta and Susan, ooh, we should really do something with this. And so that's how this got created, is kind of pulling the strings of some of the things that were introduced to us. And she's on a much more scholarly level talking about Josephus. And I learned that Josephus was attached to the Jerusalem head honcho person. I want to say prolate, I don't know what the word is. And so the Romans pulled that person out that he was attached to. So that's why we have the missing years of Yeshua, because the guy wasn't there to record it. He was off somewhere, and then he came back and picked up on the rest of the story. And so his writings were so precise. And so as memory faded, he had this written down, and people used that kind of as source material a little bit, kind of some of the pieces that she was talking about, because as you study it, there's a lot of references. And again, not necessarily always by name. You have to read between the lines because they don't come out and say things directly. And things that they knew in their culture, like that's what she was threading through for us, is things that were obvious to them. We don't know. Like, what do you mean the tower? What are you talking about? What? But to them in that time, all these hints were just following along where they weren't saying the actual, it was the subtext. It was what everybody knows we're talking about, and then what we're saying on the surface. But we don't want to get in trouble, so we're hiding it. And in Theosophy, it's called a blind, where you're going to say one thing, but you actually say something else, because on this level, if you don't know what we're talking about, you're not going to get it. But if you do and you can know deeper, then you get it. So anyway. Any other things? I think we should open up to discussion what everyone else has for questions or thoughts.
Someone,
Should I unpin everybody, spotlight everybody? Open it up?
You can, yeah. Yeah, just open it up to everybody. So just unmute yourself. And then it says, based on did we see the last temptation of Christ? It was based on the Gnostic Gospels. I have not gone back to it. I remember it caused a big stir and people were crabby about it. I do remember that. Oh, probably because it showed him married, right? So
Yes, it did. And
Yeah.
it showed him married and living in France and having a family. And it was really interesting. I think I'm gonna go watch it again now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kat, thank you. I think I saw the beginning of it. I'm remembering a
Yeah.
little part of it, but I don't think I saw the whole thing. So I'm gonna go
Is
revisit
that the one
that.
that came out in the 80s?
Right.
Yeah, I saw
Was it in the 80s?
I think so,
I
or
saw-
70s maybe.
I saw it before 19 or around 1990, I think, or around 1990,
Probably.
but I can't remember much of it.
Oh,
Who
is
was
this
the actor?
Yeah.
That guy. It was that guy.
No, you're not talking about
That
Mel
guy.
Gibson because
I
that was
can't remember.
William
Did he play the
Dafoe?
Green Lantern or something?
Was it
William Dafoe?
William Dafoe,
Okay, I
yeah.
better look
He
it
was
up.
Christ.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
He was in
Yeah.
I better look it up. I better look it
not
up.
in,
Yeah.
I don't think not in the Last Temptation, was he?
Well, I have The Last Temptation of Christ from 1988.
88.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Scorsese film. So William Dafoe was Jesus and Harvey Keitel was Judas.
Okay.
Barbara Hershey was Mary Magdalene.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that I remember.
David Bowie was Pontius Pilate.
Oh, wow.
Bowie did some really interesting
All right,
stuff.
we're gonna watch
Yeah.
that.
That's our next assignment, right?
Okay.
Go
I
watch
usually
it.
don't watch any Christ movies because it's usually around the crucifixion and I just can't take it. So I don't watch
Mhm.
I think it was graphic. I think it was pretty graphic, and that's what turned a lot of people off.
them.
Was
Yeah.
that? But I was just
It was a-
fascinated by the story,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I,
Mm.
I struggled with the what I learned anyway. So
And that part where Mary Magdalene goes to France and has kids and actually was married to Jesus was part of what we learned from Ruby's class, right?
Oh, Jennifer, you were there too. Yes, I'm sorry to
Yeah,
forget.
I was there too. Yeah.
Of course you were there, but you're here now.
And
Yeah.
most of it went over my head too. She was fascinating, but I mean,
Rapid fire information.
yeah.
I
Who
have
is
my
this?
notebook from class somewhere, and I'm gonna find it. I can't know which house it's at, but
I have pages of notes. Like
No, I'm
first
sure.
part of the sentence that
I
I
have a lot of notes too. If we put them all together, we might get the whole thing together.
Let's do that. Let's do that because we might put
we should
something
have a
together that
reunion.
we.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
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 And she wasn't okay with us recording it. It's like, oh, I want to know this. I want to hear what she's saying. But we couldn't record her. So
I kept trying to get her to write her book.
I know I wanted to write a
I
book.
kept trying, and I didn't think she was going to do that.
I know. Yeah. Wow. And so, Lydia, you're saying I've heard from a few historians that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married and had at least 2 kids. Yeah. Wow. And why, I guess, okay, so it was like 1,000 is when, I'm 1,000 Common Era. I always have trouble coming up with Common Era, but I want to. I'm working on it. Okay, so CE was when the priests had to be celibate. Then that rewrote everything. But they wiped out Yeshua being married way sooner, even though I just, something else I found this week when I was looking through all this stuff. There is a text that says that when it was taken out, but of the New Testament, but there's a writing of that's, oh no, it's not even, it's a translation in the going from, again, Aramaic, that the translation for the word for Jesus was saying, she says Ravini or something that means my rabbi, my person. And then he says, don't cling to me. You have to stop clinging to me. I haven't been to the Father. So his etheric body hadn't been processed. And he's just saying, I'll be back. Don't worry. You don't have to hang on to me like this, because she was in this great grief seeing him again, going, oh, you're here. You did it. We made it. She's clinging to him, not just don't touch me. I haven't been to the Father, ooh, don't touch me. It wasn't that refined. It was like, stop smothering me. I need you to back off, which is a way different thing, because a woman in that time would not have hugged anybody except their husband. So there.
Mhm.
So Are rabbis allowed to be married? I think they
Yeah,
are. Is that
they are
true?
married, absolutely, yeah.
And being Jewish and being a rabbi, well,
And at that time, it wasn't even acceptable not to be married and be called rabbi. You'd
Right.
be called rabbi because you were married. What, Kathy?
Yes, that's correct. You
Yeah.
were actually, it was a duty for you to get married, so it would be
Mhm.
pretty unusual if a rabbi wasn't married.
right.
Yeah.
So there goes the Christ is married evidence,
Right.
or Jesus is married, depending on
Well,
how you want to define your terms.
if anyone ever read the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, that was about the what's the cup?
Yeah, chalice.
Yeah, the Holy Grail.
Chalice
Yeah,
of
the
bliss.
Holy Grail. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, I had to think of Monty Python for a
I
second.
know, right. Yeah.
That the Grail actually was the blood lineage of Christ, which meant because wasn't he of like King of David? Wasn't he royal family?
Yes,
So
absolutely. But so was Mary.
Right.
That was the whole thing with Reuben.
yeah,
Kept talking about that Mary was also, but she was in the lineage of the Isis. She was a princess. They called her a princess in terminology, but it got pulled out. But Josephus called her a princess.
yeah. So it could also be translation of a title too. But just that
Yes.
whole idea of the blood lineage, because then that would be both of theirs together, which
Yeah.
would create a pretty impressive lineage. But yeah,
Yeah, and also they were not poor. We have this image of, oh, these people and they're going off with no resources to Jerusalem, etc., and they're practically in rags. But first of all, the ministry of these people didn't even start until they had the support financially. And Mary Magdalene was said to herself to be independent, not independently wealthy, but whatever it's called when you come from a family. So um, so then he married someone with money, but he also came from a certain level with his mother.
Right, that's correct. She basically gave money for his support, and there were two other women that had the name Mary
Yes.
that did the same.
Yeah.
It's probably she got the money from her father, most likely, and
Yeah.
the Phoenicians were there because of the fish trade. It probably was because of the fish.
Yeah.
And Christianity has a symbol of the fish.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. And okay, so was she Phoenician? Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, Phoenician, yes.
She was. And then Lydia is saying, I've heard that Jesus married Mary Magdalene because her husband John died, who was another rabbi, and Jesus married her out of respect for the previous husband, which also would happen because, wow, you do not want to be a widow in that time.
Right.
So was John her older brother?
Brother.
John the brother? Yeah.
The
older
brother.
Wait, he can't be an older brother. I'm so
Say
sorry.
the brother dies, and then the brother marries the widow. Yeah. There's a tradition in that.
Wow, interesting. Oh, it's
And-
Joseph and Mary, not wait, Mary Magdalene? No, Jesus and Mary. Oh, I'm kidding. Okay.
Mary Magdalene is who I meant.
Yes. No, you
And-
heard it right. I said it wrong.
And I just happened to watch this long show on Gaia the other day, and they were saying that it was John the Baptist who he's the one that baptized Jesus,
Sure.
right?
Yep, the rabbi. Yep. Mm-hmm.
He was married to Mary Magdalene, and then when he died,
Yeah.
yeah,
He
Jesus,
lost his head.
yeah, Jesus,
Right, John the Baptist was killed. Yeah.
They had it.
So Jesus felt so close to him that's why he married. Now, but it was a historian, and it was a historian that is associated with the Templars.
Oh.
It was a really interesting show.
And then John was a cousin. He because of the whole song.
Yeah.
The song of Miriam, the aunt, when the two babies met in the womb, the big story. and they leapt. Remember? Anyway, I know a lot of Bible stories, but I don't necessarily always track.
Oh, Elizabeth. It was the cousin Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, of course it was. Yes, of course. Believe me.
Yeah. And then,
Anyway.
yeah, the baby
Anyway.
leapt in the
Yeah.
pool.
Yes, exactly. Catherine, you were going to say something? No? Okay. Someone lit up. I just wondered if I interrupted someone.
I was wondering, it wasn't me, but just because there were so many women named Mary, and Mary having also been an Egyptian word for beloved, I wonder if Mary was also very much like a title
Yeah.
given.
Probably.
Could've been. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could very well be.
Yeah.
I sent a picture out. Who did I send it to? I'm pretty sure I sent it to Berta, and probably Susan, but there's a picture way later in the 1600s, and there's Mary, the mother, and then there's someone who looks like a woman, but it's supposedly John, and then two other people I've never heard of are on the other side of Jesus at the crucifixion. And I always think, why the artist just never painted Mary Magdalene, because she was out of the picture by then, probably. But they painted someone who looked like a woman. Why do they keep doing that? Is that the thing where if you know the top and then you go under the surface, you know more? I mean, was that a blind done by what do you call it? Fake?
The artist painted something original and then painted over it. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just asking, why is the person looking so feminine who is supposed to be John in so many of these artistic representations from that time period? Were they just trying to say that Mary Magdalene was there, but they had to name the person as being John? Because it's someone who doesn't have a beard, I didn't think.
I think it's because they were careful because the church wouldn't acknowledge it and they would get upset and so they had to kind of camouflage it. And
Right.
from what other things that I've watched and read and
Yes.
If it's commissioned art by the church too, they'd have to censor it
Right.
because they wanted their coin.
Yeah. And also they wanted the consistent message to stay pure all the way back from Constantine.
Yeah, Mary Magdalene was present at the Last Supper, and there's renditions of that where they've altered the pictures, but she was there, and sometimes she was
Michelangelo's
painted in,
painting, she's in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes she's disguised.
Yeah, because there's somebody leaning on Yeshua, and that's probably her because they were married.
You know, that would be worth I'll take a look into that because that's interesting. I suspect if it is disguised in different images that there will be some colors associated with, how like Mary's in blue and there's always symbols encoded in these paintings and icons and iconography, and how much if it is actually a representation of Magdalene or someone else, that I bet there's some colors and things around that character that would be a giveaway now.
Yes, and didn't Ruby say it was burgundy? And I think
burgundy?
I think
Okay.
so. And I think that's what John is wearing, is burgundy, which is why it's not John. But then where's John? Like, why is one of the some have said that Judas isn't pictured and that what blah blah blah. So because there aren't 12, otherwise there wouldn't be 12 disciples. But why are we so literal anyway? Because we know that there weren't just 12 disciples anyway. And some were
the apostles.
many were women.
The 12 were the apostles, but there was 144 people that were of the inner circle that included Mary Magdalene and the apostles that were actually personally taught by Jesus. The rest of the people were taught on the hillside when he preached, but that was the inner circle of people. Yeah, so they were more than the 12 for sure.
Yeah. The disciples is a broader.
Right.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And also what all was going on that didn't get through. how much got censored out? How much, we know that the pages were ripped out and we don't know what that said, and how much more was taken away.
Well, and obviously, the stuff that didn't get into the official Bible. You know what I was thinking the other day about this Dead Sea Scrolls and how when they first found them, um, they didn't really care that they weren't very careful with them. They'd even toss them in the fire to like cook their food or whatever. And it's like, oh, the stuff that's lost. I keep feeling like somewhere out there are more copies somewhere.
Sure, I'm sure there is, because
Yeah.
they wanted to preserve these things, and one of the things they did was put it out in the desert. Yeah, there'll be more probably. They're finding ones all the time. Gospel of Judas is out there. I mean, they're probably going to be finding other ones, no doubt.
Yeah.
Oh,
And one of the stories was that one of the ways that an archaeologist or someone noticed that there were that there would be something to pursue is that they saw writing on the bottom of someone's shoe. They'd used it as a sole to make their shoes. So they were walking around with something that was so precious. Didn't know it, of course, because to them it's just scribbles. They find stuff like this all the time.
yeah, Barry says the Vatican's restricted section.
Yes, exactly, for sure.
They have
Oh.
beautiful statues from Egypt down there.
They have what?
Statues from Egypt down there. Yeah.
Well, maybe this is the Pope that will unleash the truth. You never know.
He lives long enough.
Yeah, Nostradamus said he's the last pope. We'll see. That's true.
Really?
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's, that kind of, I don't know if shadows is the right word, but that the Dalai Lama says he's not coming back to,
Aw.
is that I'm just wondering if this is just like a major change in history along with the importance of religion. I don't know quite what would replace it. Hopefully just everybody being kind. If everybody would just play nice.
Oh, that reminds me. Constantine thought that if he made this makes me laugh. Constantine thought he wouldn't need an army anymore and he wouldn't need a police force anymore if he just instituted Christianity, because everybody would be so full of the love of Christ that they would all be good and nobody would make any crime anymore and everybody would get along. Yeah, that didn't work.
Wow.
And so they did. They reduced everything, and then they went, "Oh yeah, that's not working. Doesn't matter if they're Christian. This didn't work."
He was defunding the police.
He defunded his police. He thought, "Oh, I'm going to save a bunch of money because now if I make everybody Christians, they'll all be so good. And if they follow the teachings, we won't have any crime."
Wow.
Oh dear.
People are unpredictable, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Hope, I was listening to Robert Gilbert, I told you today,
Yeah.
talking about the Rosicrucians, and
Yeah.
and he made an interesting point. He said that the ancient knowledge always had the two extremes and the middle pillar, right? The trilogy kind of concept. You've got different extremes, and then you've got the middle pillar, and peace and prosperity and all the good things in life. And this is what I've learned in the mystery school. The middle pillar is it. You have an awareness of everything, and there's a balance. And then he said when Christianity came in, and that at that certain point in history, then what they did was they misunderstood Lucifer and what's the other one? There were two basic entities, and they kind of lost one of them altogether. They made Christ, which was actually the Son, the middle pillar, the Christ essence. They made Christ one opposite, and then a misunderstood evil, satanic, whatever, that really wasn't
Lucifer, yeah.
on the other side. Lucifer was actually light. And then this word that I couldn't pronounce, which is a derivative of Satan, was darkness, but you needed both because you need contrast. And then the Christ was in the middle. And so it turned from this middle pillar and balance in life to good and evil, dark and light, love and, you know what I mean? Like, and our world's been based, our world's been based on this dichotomy ever since. And he was explaining, which I can't re-explain, he's so articulate, that until we get over that model and we return to the middle pillar concept, then we won't have the collective consciousness that we're going to need to continue to evolve. So
Very Kabbalistic. Yeah. With the two pillars and central pillar, the middle of the middle pillar is the one way. And that is like the direct from the physical to the spiritual. And that is in the center is Tifereth, where there is Christ and Buddha and all of the master teachers are. That's why they were the path the one way, because it was the direct route, where if you look at the whole tree of life, it's going all over the place. You can take a lot of different routes, but boy, you can really beat yourself up going, some of them are kind of difficult.
But he ran through like 3 or 4 or 5 major traditions, ancient traditions in the world that had a similar model. So it's not, and it wasn't, you know, there was the Hermetic and the King Solomon, but there was all, and you know, the Jewish Kabbalah, but he was referring to all the ancient, like something that began with a Z that sounded like zodiac. They were before
Zohar?
They were before the Rosicrucians.
Yeah, Zohar.
Zoroastrians?
And
Zoroastrian? Yeah.
and other ancient civilizations in the East. And he pointed out the synchronicity, which we've talked about before, of how similar they were, kind of like the Mary model, and you know, and they all had this 3, either a trilogy or a pillar concept, or like three components instead of the polar opposites.
Yeah, and do you remember in the class, Ruby talked so much about the pillars and the imagery of the pillars in temples. I guess it probably is that middle, and then and there was like a number of them, and that was symbolic too, and that's why Mary Magdalene was connected to the tower, but then there was also the pillars. And now that you're saying, Erica, now that you're talking about these, and you, Jennifer, talking about these other traditions, now I understand kind of why she was talking about the pillars so much. Because I didn't know that before.
Is it Zoroaster? Is that the Z word?
Yeah, Zoroaster, yeah.
Yeah, that might be it. It was a whole civilization or a whole culture.
They were in Persia,
Yes.
in
Yes.
modern day Iran, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
and it was
right.
after Sumer. It was after Sumer, the Babylonian.
Mm-hmm. And he was talking about
That was
the spheres.
Jesus' prior life. He was Zoroaster, I guess, as Casey said.
I learned that in oh geez.
The star?
In Nita's
Nita's religion
world
study.
religion class. Yeah.
Okay.
Nita. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. He was talking about Lucifer, and then the person, and then the entity that became the short name. It was Satan, but it's an A name, Amaron, or something like that. There was that translated into something Satan in Hebrew, and then it became shortened to Satan, and then it skewed. It was the meaning.
It got skewed. Right. It got skewed.
Originally, there were 2 spheres. The contrasts were 2 giant spheres, and in the middle is what he was calling a vesica, that almond-shaped almond between the 2. And that's where the middle, kind of the middle where the Christ is, in that almond-shaped vesica, where the two spheres overlap each other. that's another way of, that's kind of sounded like the pillars to me, but that's another way he was describing it.
Oh, cool.
Is that, what is that, the Pisa Vesica or Vesica Pisa? Something, there's a name for it.
Yep.
And if you turn it sideways, then it becomes the symbol of the fish.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And that's where the Christians adopted their fish symbol, as way back then when they were still recognizing that symbolism.
Yeah, in Glastonbury Tor, there is at the Abbey, there's that well that has a gate over it that has that symbol on it. And but I can't remember what it's called, but it is the two circles coming together with that in the middle and the rest of the symbology that goes with it. I know we think in Egypt of Mot being like the thing, Mot's balance. Well, no, Mot is order, and the counterpart is Isfet, which is disorder or chaos, and not just Set wasn't even a part, he wasn't even supposed to be the god of chaos. He just kind of became that. So it's like Isfet and Ma'at are the two. But yeah, it's kind of hard because it's supposed to be the balance. It's like almost if you have too much good, then what happens then? Is there such a thing as too much good? Because if everything is good, eventually that's going to sift out and there's going to be really good and not so good. You know, it kind of just the way things seem to be. I don't know if there is, and I know people, it would be really boring if we were all the same, but
Balance.
yeah.
Have the good and the evil, or the happy and the sad, or, you know.
It's kind of like, and rolling with it, which becomes the infinity sign too. It's being able to, if you go to the one side, can roll back and to the other. So it's like on one of those teeter boards, those rollabolas, where they're on the cylinder on the like the skateboard on it, and it goes kind of back and forth. So it's like the symbol in the Two of Pentacles in the Tarot, which reminds me of the infinity sign is on it. And it's like that balance, because it just, we kind of teeter back and forth, and it's like some days are really good and some days not the best, but it's just that going with the waves, with the flow. That's how I kind of see the duality these days.
I just want to comment and read Lydia, right? Yeah, Lydia's comment. Jesus came into existence at the dawn of Pisces, the fish. And then Moses destroyed the bull when he came down the mountain, and that was the end of Taurus. And now we're heading into the age of Aquarius. And so this whole shift out of perhaps the organized religion into something broader, and we can hope healthier. I was thinking about the Taurus, but the golden bull is the Babylonian. It isn't just Egypt, it's the Babylonian influence, Sumerian influence, being adopted by probably a lot of the world. And then Moses is going, nope. But it really just meant that going into monotheism, because again, oral Torah, it was the oral tradition of all this stuff that got written down. Like there wasn't literally this and that and the other. It's just all this myth making around a religion.
Well, and he did make the point today that, and this might be the next phase, because the religions have made central distortions that don't work in truth, as far as the truth of energy and vibration and the way the cosmos work and what we're made of and what we're part of and all that. And he basically, a lot of what's coming up now that we can find all over the internet and on talk shows and books and movies and everything else is the encouragement of us to go within. The one thing that a lot of the religions created was an intermediary. We could not discover our souls and our gods without going through all this rigmarole, which is not the truth of it. And so it's almost going back to the original concepts and getting and not needing the religion, because there's all kinds of practices and rituals and meditations and ways that we we can discover who we are and connect with the higher realms without and pull from that and be empowered as a spiritual being, even on this plane, by all these different things that don't require organized religion at all. It's just
I totally agree. And when somebody said maybe the Dalai Lama isn't coming back, or maybe there won't be a pope, it's because they're no longer going to be needed if we continue to evolve like we should. Like there's a saying that says, if all the kids started meditating at the age of 8, by the time they would be adults, we'd have peace in the world. Now, I can only pray that that is the true story, but more and more people are like your organization. I mean, I've been looking for it for a long time, but so many of us are trying to find our own ways to evolve, and I think that's really cool.
And theosophy accepts, in a way accepts all, but it isn't a religion, and it isn't, it's exploration. It's combining science with what else do we know, and so.
Oh no, I think it's the end of religion.
Yeah.
It's like when people ask me, like people that don't know me, if I follow a religion, I say, well, the only thing I can tell you is no offense to anyone. Oh, maybe I shouldn't say this.
You can say anything here, I'm sure.
oh yeah, we won't get offended.
Say I'm a recovering Catholic, and
We say that all the time here.
oh, okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay,
I'm a
So-
recovering Baptist,
okay. So we might become in the age of Aquarius would be a really good time for us as humans to evolve into being able to go inside and find our own divinity. And I think though that there's powers that be that don't want us to. The warring. I'm a veteran, but I'm also I belong to a organization called Veterans for Peace, because our wars are no longer, I don't know if I should say this, in my opinion, our wars are no longer about, I mean, look at what's happening overseas right now.
Yeah.
It's not about right and wrong, it's about money and
Power.
yes. Yeah. So hopefully we can evolve from that.
Yeah. There are like the Waldorf schools teach meditation to kindergartners. It's day one, and probably they already were, at home, because their parents put them there. Jennifer Aniston went to a Waldorf school. I just learned that. Huh.
Yeah,
So-
that was Mitch Horowitz
Yeah, he just said
talked
that.
about that.
He did.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
he
he
did.
also, one of the other things that I had heard this at some time, and he said too the other night that it's not the age of the teacher that we follow anymore. We're in the age of the group, and that's and well, here we're doing it today, and so that food for thought.
Yeah, and it's not one person standing up and saying this is what's true. It is a group exploring what works, what draws us, what excites us, what fascinates us, what confounds us. That's what I put in the explanation of tonight, that we were going to talk about what attracts us, but also what confounds us. Like, how did that happen, or whatever. Yeah, which we've accomplished tonight. Yay.